Sean, that the Republicans should win. I mean, there's no doubt about this. This is Republican territory, and they should win. So we'll be covering every vote as it's counted, and we really appreciate it. Great show tonight, Sean, as always.
You too. Have a great show, and the results probably momentarily.
Absolutely. And good evening from Washington. I am Laura Ingraham, and this is the Ingraham Angle. Voters in Pennsylvania's 18th congressional district headed to the polls tonight for this special election that pitted Republican Rick Saccone and Democrat Conor Lamb against each other. President Trump easily defeated Hillary Clinton there in 2016. So Democrats and the mainstream media have tried to frame the contest as a bellwether for a potential blue wave in the 2018 midterms. But is that accurate? Right now, the election is simply too close to call. And joining us now with a reaction from Miami is former governor of the great state of Pennsylvania, Ed Rendell, who's probably very happy right now. He's a Democrat. And in New York, Monica Crowley, a senior fellow at the London Center for Policy Research. Governor Rendell, have to go to you. Look, if Conor Lamb, in his early 30s, former military man, kind of a moderate Democrat, he pulls out a victory, what does it say to you?
Well, first of all, it is indicative of what's going on across the nation. This is our 19th special election, and in every one of them, the Democrats have picked up a substantial percentage of the vote from where they were in 16. So that's a good sign for the Democrats. But understand, the 18th is good Trump country. The president has a 51% favorable rating, according to the Monmouth poll, in the district. So it's solid Trump country. Lamb turned out to be a terrific candidate. He did a good job of not letting the Republicans nationalize the race. He is a moderate. He's pro-life. He's moderate on guns. He's a very intelligent candidate. He did a good job with the steelworkers and the coal miners, got their endorsement. So if he wins, and it's still close, I have it at 700 votes with 36 precincts left to be cast.
Well,
if he wins, it'll be a credit to him.
Well, that's for sure. And Monica, look, I would take issue with this idea that he's pro-life. I think Marjorie Dannenfelser's piece in National Review this week just put that to rest, because he's not really pro-life. He says, well, personally,
well, he's more pro-life. He's more pro-life than most Democrats.
Yeah, you're right. That's right, Governor Rendell. He is not a Nancy Pelosi Democrat. So, Monica, what does this say to the Democrat Party, though? If this is the type of Democrat who can win in a district where Trump won, what does that say to the Pelosi-Schumer wing of the party? They're moving left, and Conor Lamb seemed to move to the right.
Well, that's exactly right, Laura. Look, the current Democratic Party is Barack Obama's Democratic Party. It's no longer Bill Clinton's Democratic Party, a party of pragmatists and centrists. It is a far-left radical party. Conor Lamb broke the mold from that because he was running in a district that Donald Trump won by 20 points, very conservative district. So this is a young Marine veteran who, as the governor said, had a series of very conservative positions on guns and other issues that he embraced in order to try to win this race. The lesson going forward then for the Democratic Party is, if you want to try to get back to an appeal to the working class voters that helped put Donald Trump over the top, particularly, Laura, in those 10 key swing states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, then you better change your tune and get back to the Democratic principles of the party of old, which is more pragmatist, centrist, and moderate, and reject the Pelosi and Barack Obama, a far-left kind of radical approach.
I mean, Governor Rendell, I said this for some time, and others have as well, that that's where the Democrats' sweet spot always was, the party of the little guy. And somehow the Democrats became the party of, like, the teachers' unions, of the trial lawyers, of the Planned Parenthood. And I think they missed, just like the Republicans did in a different way, they missed the heart of America. And the heart of America runs right through Pennsylvania, right through Pennsylvania.
No question, you're right. The core values of the Democratic Party going back 50 years are values that most Americans agree with, and we've gotten away from them. We play identity politics. It isn't good. And I tell my progressive friends, I said, Conor Lamb will cast a very important vote, and the vote that you should care most about, and that's for the next Speaker of the House. Whether it's Nancy Pelosi or somebody else, if it's a Democrat, we can bring legislation to the floor that we can't get to the floor now. That's the single most important thing. And if we want to be a party that really controls, we have to understand that. And our progressive wing has to understand it most of all.
Well, you think of the alarmism over Trump's tariffs, for instance, and both Saccone and Lamb gave, fairly decent support for the idea of tariffs, if not as broad-based as Trump's. But then you think of the caterwauling we heard from both the establishment Democrats, some of them, and the establishment Republicans, more so the Republicans. It just shows you this is why Trump won in Pennsylvania, because he's for bringing back manufacturing that both Democrats and Republicans, Obama and Hillary, and Republicans had said we're never going to get those jobs back. And that was an insult to the voters of Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Iowa, and beyond. And so if I'm a Democrat watching this tonight, I don't care if you're living in California or you're living in Wisconsin or Ohio. Conor Lamb, if he pulls out this narrow victory, they've got to look at this and say, wait a second, we better re-examine where we are in a whole host of issues. I know the country's different in places, but to me, that was Trump's recipe for success, and it can be the Democrats' recipe for success. Monica?
Remember, Laura, that Donald Trump essentially created a new winning coalition, sort of like what Obama did in 2008. Donald Trump turned everything upside down. He essentially was the first post-ideological president. So he takes positions that are not traditionally Republican, even though he won as a Republican president. That kind of cross-current appeal to the working class voters on all sides that have felt ignored by the elites in the Republican establishment, the Democratic establishment. They felt for a long time that their wages were not increasing. They couldn't get decent jobs. They were in the industrial Rust Belt, particularly in the Midwest, states like Pennsylvania. And Donald Trump gave them a voice. He spoke to them. And you know what? Because he's post-ideological, he is solutions-oriented. He is not ideologically based. He is solutions-oriented. So if you're a Democrat and if your candidate pulls this out in this district, the lesson is to reject the far-left approach that was begun by Obama and perpetuated by Nancy Pelosi and the other radicals that are controlling the Democratic Party. Their eyes should be open tonight, and they should see, even if they lose, this is a very close race, they should see that the path to electoral success does not go through far-left radicalism.
Governor Rendell, you got about 15 seconds. Let's say Saccone had run as an establishment Republican, not in favor of tariffs. Where do you think this race would have been tonight? Again, we don't know where it's going to turn out, but don't you think Conor Lamb would have been ahead like 10 points at least?
Well, at least 3 or 4, no question. And look, tariffs, I testified about imposing a tariff when I was governor because China was dumping steel into the U.S. to try to drive out our steel industry. The thing that Donald Trump did wrong, Laura, is he did it too broad-based. You should do it against transgressors, people who are dumping product into the U.S.
He got a lot of leverage against the EU, and we're going to see where that leverage leads. But a great panel.
Well,
we're going to keep you guys. We're going to keep you guys hanging around. We really appreciate it. We're going to keep everyone up to date. Minute by minute, this race is changing. But straight ahead, my angle on President Trump shaking up his team. Plus, Senator Bob Corker is going to weigh in for a can't-miss interview. Stay with us.
The Ingraham Angle is brought to you by the makers of non-drowsy Claritin. Live Claritin Clear.
Feel the clarity of non-drowsy Claritin and relief from symptoms caused by over 200 allergens, like those from Buddy. Because stuffed animals are clearly no substitute for real ones. Feel the clarity and live Claritin Clear.
At Safe Flight Auto Glass, we know that when you're...
Welcome back. We continue to monitor the special election in Pennsylvania's 18th district. There could be an automatic recount kicking in if the margin is at 0.5 percentage. So we'll be checking that and bring you the up-to-date vote counts as we get them. But first, Trump gets his team and the media goes berserk. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Now, if you've been following American politics over the past 9 months or so, and you have a decently functioning human brain, you should not have been surprised to wake up to the news that Rex Tillerson is out at the State Department.
Rex and I have been talking about this for a long time. We got along actually quite well, but we disagreed on things. When you look at the Iran deal, I think it's terrible. I guess he thought it was okay. I wanted to either break it or do something, and he felt a little bit differently. So we were not really thinking the same.
Tillerson, who was told he was being let go on Friday by General Kelly, spoke briefly to reporters today, and he didn't look well. He was visibly emotional.
I want to speak now to my State Department colleagues and to our interagency colleagues and partners at DOD and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, most particularly. To my Foreign Service officers and civil service colleagues, we all took the same oath of office. Whether you're a career, employee, or political appointee, we are all bound by that common commitment.
Well, that was nice. Well, back in November, I asked the president about the Secretary of State's job security.
I want my vision, but my vision is my vision anyway. It's called cost saving. There's nothing wrong with cost saving. Rex is in there working hard. He's doing his best. He's doing the best he can.
Is he going to be with you for the duration?
Well, we'll see. I don't know who's going to be.
Well, not exactly a ringing endorsement of the duration. Well, of course, the lemmings in the press spent the entire day painting the Tillerson firing as evidence of more White House dysfunction.
This almost feels like a vacation from the reality TV-style turmoil that is churning back in Washington. The president may be wondering why he didn't come to California sooner. This is his first trip out here because of everything that he's left behind.
What does chaos mean in our foreign policy? It means many of our allies who I've worked for over the years, they don't know what to expect next from the United States. That creates a vacuum in the world that Russia is moving into very quickly and China is moving into in Asia.
Oh, yeah, Trump caused the rise of China and the Russia aggression in Crimea. Oh, my goodness. Chaos? You mean what we saw for the 8 years of the Obama administration when Barack Obama didn't fire anyone over Benghazi, the IRS targeting of conservatives, or the Fast and Furious scandal? Or was it the chaos we saw when Obama pushed out Gaddafi and Mubarak, sparking the rise of ISIS in Iraq and in Syria? Now, what about the chaos of doubling our debt and exploding the trade deficit? As China, of course, grew bolder and more powerful, did any of that count as chaos? Well, Trump, by contrast, has been very clear that we want to have better relationships with more nations if possible, and we're not going to be anyone's pushover. Look, the fact is, Tillerson should have tendered his resignation a long time ago. He disagreed with the president on major issues. He was opposed to the talks with North Korea. He supported the Paris Climate Accords. He questioned the president's Charlottesville response. He was at odds with Trump on moving the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem and was a fan of the Iran nuclear deal. Oh, great. The president, of course, was not a fan. Other than that, the two were perfectly in sync. And then there was this.
Could you address the main headline of this story that you called the president a moron? And if not, where do you think these reports or
I'm not going to deal with petty stuff like that. I mean, this is what I don't understand about Washington. Again, I'm not from this place, but the places I come from, we don't deal with that kind of petty nonsense.
How about the place I come from is if you call your boss a moron, you probably shouldn't be in that position. The only question I have is, why did it take the president so long to fire Tillerson? I'm sure he's a nice guy, but come on. CIA Director Mike Pompeo, by all accounts, is a far better fit to be Trump's Secretary of State. As the president said, it's kind of about chemistry and approach. Tillerson didn't gel in either category.
I've gotten to know a lot of people very well over the last year, and I'm really at a point where we're getting very close to having the cabinet and other things that I want.
And since last summer, the president has been slowly getting his team together. Think about it. He hired General John Kelly as chief of staff. He moved Sarah Sanders in as press secretary. He moved Tom Price out and Alex Azar in as secretary of HHS. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot more changes to come. That's not chaos. That's called smart staffing. He's been in the White House just over 13 months or so. And now Trump knows what he needs in his closest staff, and the cabinet too. And he might not do everything the button-down, traditional way, well, that's for sure. But he's hitting his stride, and he's getting a really strong team in place. Think about it this way. When a player isn't performing on the field or on the court, a good coach benches him. And when that same player is a consistent drag on the team, Well, a good coach is going to trade him or just let him go entirely. And that's precisely what Trump did. And he should do the same with anyone else who seems pained to support his agenda once he makes his decision final. And that's the angle. For reaction, I talked to Republican Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee just a short time ago. Senator Corker, good to see you. Thanks for first time on the Ingraham Angle. So,
You're not so late.
I know. Well, we kept you up, but let's talk about today. Big news day. Did this really surprise you, Rex Tillerson out today by the president? Did you ever think he was a great fit?
I thought he was really good at giving sound advice. I've known for some time. I talked to both of them often, and I've known it hasn't been a perfect fit. So was I surprised? Not really. But I will say since December 1st, right around that time, you felt a reprieve. You felt like that they were working better together. So
the story today was, this is chaos. People are freaking out in the media. Oh, this is just more chaos. And it turns out that the president is apparently considering also firing the VA secretary after the story broke that he was on some sightseeing trip, I guess, in Europe on an official business. Shulkin might be out, replaced by Rick Perry. Thoughts on that?
I think Rick will be good at anything he does. He's been a good governor, obviously. But look, this is, as I was telling you earlier, the reporters in the hallway have almost become to, this is just sort of normal, and changes are occurring. And, the president needs someone as Secretary of State that he has a lot of faith in. And again, I thought Rex did a very good job. He has a great relationship with Mattis, which is very unusual, and the two of them always go in on the same page. And I don't know Pompeo very well, but I do hear very good things about him, and we look forward. He's going to be in the office later this week. I look forward to a good confirmation.
Well, the thought is the internationalists, the interventionists in the Republican Party are kind of on the downslide, and the more nationalist, populist wing is on the ascendancy because, of course, Pompeo is more in line with Trump. Tillerson's more, I think, more in line with, your thinking. And what are your thoughts on that? Is it better to have that tension where the internationalists are kind of vying for the president's ear?
Now, I would use the word realist.
Okay, fine. And I say you use your terminology.
Yeah,
I'll use mine.
And I think the president's speech, which we lauded, I was the first person, I think, to laud one of his foreign policy speeches, had the makings of a Jim Baker kind of realist world. So I don't necessarily look at him as a nationalist. I mean, he is, in Afghanistan doing what he's doing and committed to not something that's defined by time and some other. So he's a mix. He's more of a realist. I do think it's good to have countering voices, and
the president does as well. And he said that, and I think he's fine with that.
He actually likes hearing the debate. I mean, he talked about that a great deal in the Gary Cohn when he left. So, look, I think that as long as whoever is working with him, regardless of what their point of view is giving him the full collage of opportunities to think about things, then I think that's fine.
Yeah, but Tillerson couldn't answer the question, did you call him a moron? I mean, that's just not going to work well. And remember, Barack Obama been with the CIA for 30 years. She'd be the first woman to ever head that agency. She is not going without criticism today. This is a former FBI special agent, Ali Soufan, who was on MSNBC earlier today. Let's watch.
There is an issue of torture, but also there's an issue of the destruction of videotapes, evidence on torture. Right. And that happened in violation to a federal judge's order. So now this is another thing that needs to come out during the confirmation hearing. We need to know what she thinks about these issues.
The left is gearing up to go after Gina Haspel, who is an undercover for most of her career, is being lauded even by some former Obama administration officials, like I think Clapper today. What of that?
I think we're going to see with these changes, maybe 3 of them. You mentioned one that I was unaware of earlier. Probably likely to see a pretty partisan environment over the next couple of months.
We had a article today out about how the new omnibus spending bill might not defund sanctuary cities. And I saw that today and I thought, wait a second. Now we got the House and the Senate in Republican hands. We got a Republican president. Republicans in election time are really big on defunding things. We're going to do this. We're going to take the money from Planned Parenthood. We're going to defund sanctuary cities. And now it looks like they might not do that, meaning you guys might not do that. And I'm thinking, what planet am I living on? What is your view on the sanctuary city issue? President's out in California today.
I think we should follow through on defunding them. Now, this is a decision made by McConnell, Ryan, Schumer, and Pelosi. Okay, they're the ones that are the final deciders. I have no idea what's in the Omni. What I do know,
that's a problem too. No one knows what's in it, apparently.
No, I mean, I think the House may vote on it this Friday. We're supposed to take it up next week. But regardless of the defunding, which I hope occurs, it's a god-awful amount of money. We're spending $2 trillion more over the next decade if we go through with this process, which we are. So I think the American people ought to be alarmed by the massive amount of spending that's in this bill, and we ought to defund sanctuary cities.
You were close to not voting for that tax bill because it really wasn't what a lot of us wanted in a tax bill, but nevertheless it does seem like it's juiced the economy.
It has.
A lot of spending. Any regrets there?
Look, I mean, I've been a deficit hawk my entire time. I just alluded to that now. But I've also been a pro-growth tax person, and so you end up in this place. You know, nothing is perfect here. It was about $500 billion off on a $43 trillion base, something I didn't want to see happen. But at the end of the day, I'm glad the economy is growing, and I'm glad that businesses are hiring people and wages are going up.
Mueller investigation, where do you think this is going to end up? And people say Trump's not as tough on Russia as he should be. And I looked at Obama. Russia rolled into Crimea.
Right.
They were doing the reset. That didn't work.
Right.
It didn't seem like Russia was deterred at all in the Obama administration, but you know, a lot of
we tried to get lethal defensive weapons into Ukraine. We couldn't do it. We passed a bill to make that happen, and now the Trump administration is sending those lethal weapon items in. So look, I don't know anything about what's happening with the Mueller investigation, but and I heard President Trump speak up today about the killing of the spy in the UK. So I think the rhetoric from him is getting stronger. Certainly Congress on both sides of the aisle has been pushing back. And look, Russia's a problem, and they're going to be a problem likely in our elections.
Who's the bigger problem, China or Russia? Size of the economy, size of the military.
Yeah, you know, Russia's got the economy the size of Italy, so you know there's not much there, but they do have nuclear armaments. Immediately, the issue is more acute with Russia because they try to stop all that we're doing. They try to interfere. They even are interfering with North Korea. Longer term, no question. China is going to bypass us in all likelihood economically, and is that
a foregone conclusion? China's going to bypass us economically? I'm not buying into that. I don't want them to bypass us economically.
If you just look at the numbers and you look at the likelihood is that is what is going to, you know, you look at us having 320 million people, you look at them having you know, 1 billion, 2 or 3, just the economics and the numbers.
Do you think Trump is doing the right thing on the tariffs then, and standing up to China, saying you're dumping all this material in our country?
Well, I wish he'd focus more on China, I'll just be honest. I mean, it looks like we're trying to punish our allies when the focus should be multilaterally. I know you don't like that word, but against China. So I don't like the way we're going about it, and now it looks like we're maybe trading off NATO dues or something like that. So
but we get leverage. How do we get leverage against the EU, though, when we have a $150 billion trade deficit with them? We have a $68 billion trade deficit with Japan, South Korea, trade deficit going up. We now have some leverage with them, do we not? Isn't that the way to get results for the American people?
So if you're focused on trade deficit, you wouldn't focus on steel with them. You'd focus on steel with China, which is producing 49% of the world's steel. So I don't like the way that we've gone about it. I don't. I've said that. And I think we should be far more focused on China, as you mentioned. And over time, they are the entity that's stealing our intellectual property. They've got a program. I mean, we've got a president for life there.
Yeah, it's a new now. How is that going to work out for freedom?
Look, so they are going to be the longer term challenge for us, and one that is much bigger. And as you know, being who you are, history says that when one power potentially surpasses the other economically, that creates conflict. And so it's going to be the most difficult issue for us to manage.
Now, why do you think the president's approval rating is higher than Congress's today?
Look, I don't smile so favorably on Congress either. I like the people that I work with. Many of them are very, very smart. Most of them are very hardworking. But it's just the way it's always been. It's kind of like lawyers. And
you have a good relationship, though, outgoing with the president. I know you speak to him regularly. I mean, you've had a lot of tough words for him, and he's had really tough words for you.
Yeah, vice versa. But, you know, he called, look, we're two hard-nosed business guys. And, you know, he called Friday night. He picks up the phone to talk about whatever he wants to talk about. Called me today. And yeah, we've got a very warm relationship, as we do throughout the administration. So it's never stopped. There might have been some public words, but we kept working.
Yeah, that's okay. Keep it in the family. Hey, it's really good to have you on. Thank you so much.
We
enjoyed it.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
And it's looking like a photo finish in Pennsylvania in that special congressional race. Let's bring in Fox's Brett Baer for an update. Brett, I can't get any closer. Was it 585 votes right now separating the candidates?
585 votes, 97% of the precincts reporting, Laura. And you have a situation now where there are 13 precincts out there. Some of them lean towards Saccone traditionally. Others could be about even. You are talking down to the wire. The Libertarian, by the way, in this race is getting more than 1,200 votes. Double the distance between the two, Democrat and Republican. We should also point out there are about 6,000 to 7,000 absentee ballots out there, and there are at least 2 precincts tonight that saying they are not going to count them tonight. So this could be a deal where you don't have an answer tonight.
Yeah.
And this isn't a statewide race. It's not an automatic recount.
Right.
It can be requested within 5 days if you have 3 voters in each precinct who file a complaint.
Now, what does it say to the Democrats and the Republicans tonight? The party, by all accounts, have been moving to the left, but Conor Lamb moved to the right on a number of issues, certainly on trade. He's more with Trump. Guns, he's more toward the Republicans. It's a very Republican district, 20-point win for Trump in that district. And it's pretty interesting how he's looking like he could pull out a victory here, but very out of tune with his own party.
Well, that's right. A couple of things we can make clear. No matter what happens tonight, white working class voters voted for the Democrat in this district. That went by 20 points to Donald Trump. The other thing we can point out is, as you point out, this is not the traditional Democrat we've seen in recent races that is running more progressive and more to the left. This is a candidate who is more moderate, who was on guns, on trade, on union issues, on life. You've got somebody that was basically running like a moderate Republican. And Donald Trump did make a difference, but this candidate, Rick Saccone, was out fundraised by 5-1 by the Democrat Conor Lamb. So Republicans will say was the candidate who was weak, no matter if he wins or not. This is not a great sign for the GOP in that particular district.
Yeah, well, Saccone was on radio with me today, and he was okay. But he's not Trump. I mean, he doesn't have that same mojo. Brett, we're going to be on this. Thank you so much. We'll be coming back to you with these updates throughout the night. And this is down to the wire. 585 votes with just a few precincts left, and a few will not report tonight. Stay there.
It's happening. I'm shaking. In just days, Publishers Clearinghouse will be ready to award $7,000 a week for life.
Pennsylvania. But first, President Trump famously did not visit California in his first year as president. With its sanctuary policies and its hostile far-left leaders, kind of who could blame him? Well, Mr. Trump finally had a valid reason to go to the Golden State today, where he took a look at the prototypes of his border wall in San Diego. And he explained why the wall is essential.
You take a look at the fence, and it's a very powerful fence, not doing the trick, because they cut holes in it, and then they're patching holes all the time. I'm just looking, you have hundreds of holes cut in and patched. So the fence is not strong enough. It's not the right idea. But for those people, if you don't have a wall system, we're not going to have a country.
He was back on the construction site today. I loved it. Joining us now for a reaction is the CEO who submitted one of those prototypes. Fisher Sand and Gravel CEO Tommy Fisher joins us from Phoenix. Okay, Fisher Sand and Gravel, you guys have been in business for, I don't know, since 1952. It's a family-run company. And what was it like to have the president check out the prototype today?
Oh, it was a great honor for myself and all the employees, and hopefully my dad looking down from heaven to see where we've, come to. So to have that opportunity to demonstrate to the president and all the people of America of what we're capable of building, it was just a great honor. And I'd also like to thank your commitment and determination to keep border security front and center with all your viewers as well, Laura.
Absolutely. Well, I want to play a soundbite. This is the president. He was looking at all the different prototypes, and he made like a running commentary throughout. This is part of it. Let's watch.
We're looking very much at the wall with some see-through capability on the other side, and then solid concrete on top, or steel and concrete on top. The round piece that you see up here, or you see more clearly back there, the larger it is, the better it is, because it's very hard to get over the top. It's really deterrent from getting over the top. Who would think? Who would think? But getting over the top is easy. These are like professional mountain climbers. They're incredible climbers. They can't climb some of these walls. Some of them they can. Those are the walls we're not using.
All right, Tommy, which wall was he talking about? Because we were watching soundbite after soundbite today of individuals who are against this wall who were saying, I can get over this. I've gotten over other structures before. There's no wall they can make tall enough for me not to get over, because I'm determined to get back into the United States where I can make some money or see my family. So what makes your wall impenetrable for the people who really want to climb it?
Well, first of all, Laura, our wall is solid concrete. So if you're see-through, you're basically a fence, or you can cut like President Trump was talking about earlier with the steel. And steel has its purpose out on the border, but basically encased in our concrete. The biggest difference is we took vision very, very serious when we put our proposal together. That's why our wall's strong enough to be backfilled. So agents have a 360-degree panoramic top view down, so they have the advantage. And hopefully the president will get to see that with some of the other pictures. And then the difference is we can build through the mountains as well, and we have a product that lasts 150 years. It broke my heart today to see the president talk about fixing wall that's been out there, that's a remnant wall or something, and some of that wall's only been out there, or the fence, what I want to say, the steel fence, 10 years up to 20 some years, and they're replacing. Our wall has a 150-year lifespan. But the big difference with ours is we're building access roads for the agents. So you're not even getting close to our wall. Our wall has a road in front, a road behind, and it has such a superior advantage. And that's why we were able to procure the largest bond in the history of the United States that's sitting on Homeland Security's desk that I gave them in January for $10.77 billion, like I talked to you in the radio show, to build 700 miles. I've also placed a $274 million bid with land that I just purchased in California to build the first 15 miles in the most rugged, mountainous terrain to prove to the president as well as every American, if you don't have a complete border protection system, you do not have security. And like you said earlier, I take with great respect, the president will, if he allows us to play and our team of Fisher Industries to play, I guarantee you, no different than Tom Brady, once we get in, we never come out. And if we don't perform, the president can fire us. And that's how comfortable and confident I am, is when people see what we really offer.
I love it. I'm not taking sides on which prototype is best, but this is why you're a good businessman. Really quick question. How many jobs are we talking? And just really quick, what types of jobs? Are these good-paying jobs, only American products and only American workers, correct?
All American with all American grit. We probably, if we did the big project, the 700 miles, you're talking thousands of jobs with us and our partners. The smaller job, probably 1,000 jobs. But here's the big difference is our product and our patent pending system does not need cranes. So when we go into the mountains, Laura, I promise you in 30 minutes, you could be running one of our excavators, pulling back those wall forms, and you would see 30 feet of perfect wall built.
All right, Tommy Fisher, Fisher Sand and Gravel. Fascinating to see the president out there. It was like he was back on the job site in a construction project. Thanks so much. And I have a question. Should President Trump send federal troops to sanctuary cities? That seems wild, right? Well, we're going to debate it directly ahead.
I thought I was managing my moderate to severe ulcerative colitis.
President Trump in California today had harsh words for the state's sanctuary policies, and he singled out Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf for tipping off hundreds of illegal immigrants of an impending ICE operation last month.
The sanctuary cities are protecting a horrible group of people in many cases, criminals. And what happened as an example in Oakland was a disgrace to our nation, and we just can't let that happen.
And President Trump had said he'd like to strip federal funding from sanctuary cities, but some scholars have raised the question of whether he could do something far more aggressive, as in sending in federal troops under something called the Insurrection Act. But should he and can he? Let's bring in John Cox. He's a Republican candidate for governor in California. He's in L.A. tonight. And in San Francisco, Joe Alioto Veronice. He's the former California Criminal Justice Commissioner. It's great to see both of you. All right, Joe, let's start with you on this.
Thank you, Laura.
It's called the Insurrection Act, and Glenn Reynolds had written a piece in USA Today about it, saying this is this is kind of out there in a way, but the Supremacy Clause doesn't mean that the states can completely override federal authority. And again, it's a theory, but given what Jeff Sessions said last week in his speech in California, it looks like, it's a remote, at least, possibility.
This is not a possibility. This is political theater that is being used to frame the debate. It's essentially a big lie. We've seen this before out of the Trump administration. Build a wall, Mexico's going to pay for it, send in the troops, deport violent criminals, drain the swamp. None of this is actually happening when you look at the facts here. These statements, they just prey on his base because they know that there's nothing being done in Washington on these very important issues.
I hate to interrupt you so quickly, but Joe, when you say the president hasn't done that, yes, they have. The president has ensured that we've deported hundreds upon hundreds of the most vile child molesters, rapists, people who are domestic batterers, who are illegally in this country and who are criminals. So when you say he's not done that, that's just false, my friend. I'm sorry, but you can't come on this show and say they haven't done that. They have done that, and that's good.
No, look. We want to deport violent criminals. Nobody is against that. But when he ran for president, he said that those are the only people that were going to be deported. We're finding that the facts on the street are actually not that. Less than half of the people are actually violent criminals. The rest of them, many of them,
whose fault is
are
that?
People who have been here for decades in the United States.
Let's get Cox into this.
It's ICE's fault. It's INS's fault.
Okay.
It's immigration.
John,
it's federal immigration's fault.
Let's get John Cox into this. Now, whose fault is it that ICE has to rush in to neighborhoods because a state official or a local official has warned the population that ICE is coming, instead of help us find these people so we can have targeted, get them in a targeted way and get them out of the country? I'm sorry, but I don't think that's
this is really.
Go ahead.
This is really rich. Can I get a response
Mr. Cox
here?
first.
Sure.
Yes, this is really rich in irony here, Laura, that Mr. Alioto is accusing the Democrat or accusing Mr. Trump of political theater when it's the Democrats are engaging in the political theater to cover up their mismanagement of this state. These are violent criminals that they're going after in Oakland. They were suspected gang members. This is the safety and security of the people of California. And Jerry Brown and Gavin Newsom are political demagogues who are using this issue to scare people, to create a war with Washington that shouldn't exist. Yes, the president is fully justified in using the military if he has to. President Eisenhower did that to enforce law after Brown versus Board of Education in the 50s. I want to know how Jerry Brown and Gavin Newsom get off being George Wallace and standing up and saying they're not going to allow federal law to take precedence. This is totally, completely against the law, and they're doing it to cover up their incredible mismanagement of the state of California.
We're going to have you both back on. We're going to have you both back on when it's not an election night. I'm sorry that I can't give you another rebuttal, Joe, but we're up against the clock. Up next, live analysis of the still too close to call special election in Pennsylvania's 18th.